This is 4.1 Notes, Intro to Data Collection. We're going to go through and talk about a bunch of key features for collecting data and really just going over the vocabulary. So the first thing that we're looking at is called a population. So a population is the entire group of individuals you want information about. So this is the entire group, and we're going to go over what that means in just a second. The next part is a piece of the population. So whenever you're taking a piece of the population, you're sampling it. You're taking a little bitty piece of the pie, you're just trying it out. So that's a subset of individuals in the population that we want to collect data about. Now, in order to collect data about every single individual in the population, you have to do what is called a census. So a government typically does a census every 5 to 10 years to collect data over the households. So they're trying to get information about every single person in the population. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do is an example. So Miss McDonald wants to see how tall Dickinson High School students are. She decides to take the height of all students in her classes. So for this case, we're trying to figure out what is the population. Who is she trying to get a generalization about? And that would be all high school students. That is the population. So all students at Dickinson High School, which is like 3,400, I think. I don't know. Somewhere around there. Now the sample, that's who is she sampling? Who is she asking? Who is she actually going to take the effort to ask this question to? And that is going to be just the students in her class. So our sample is students in Miss McDonald's class. And that's like 180 people. So a sample will always be smaller than the population because you're trying to get the samples from the population. So the big picture is your population, the small picture is the sample. Okay, so we're going to kind of switch gears a little bit here, and we're going to talk about the different types of ways that you can collect data. The first way that you can, except for surveys, the first way that you can is to do an observational study. An observational study is exactly what you think about, or exactly what you think. It's whenever you observe individuals and measure the variables of interest without influencing the results. This is whenever you're people watching. This is whenever you're just looking to see what happens. You're really not paying attention to how things are going. As far as trying to influence them to do something, you're having nothing to do with them. You are simply just watching them and collecting data about what they do. Now, an experiment, that is whenever you deliberately impose on the individuals to measure the response. That is, you are deliberately doing something. So a lot of people do experiments over different kinds of medication to see if it will actually decrease whatever they're trying to study. An experiment might be if you're trying to gauge a reaction out of someone. So you're asking different types of questioning. But an experiment is whenever you are physically doing something to your individual to get a response. So those are the key difference between a observational study and an experiment. Now, the last thing that we're going to talk about together is good statistical questioning. And these 2 stars right here are very important. It is where you are going to write that a good statistical question has responses that can vary. So if a question has only one answer, it's bad. It is not a good statistical question. You really can't do a study over that. Because in order to do a study or an experiment or to find the probability of something, you really have to have a bunch of different data coming together. So a good statistical question is going to have different answers. So in these examples, we're going to figure out which of these is a good statistical question and which one is a bad one. So the first one is, how many innings was the Astros game on Saturday night? First thing you're going to think of, how many answers does that question have? And the answer to this question is only one. There is only one answer. So this is a bad question because there's only one answer. Okay, now on the other hand, if you were to ask a question like how many players are left on base during a typical playoff game, that can have different answers. So it can vary between different teams. It can vary between different years of the playoffs. It has a lot of different outcomes. So we're going to say that this is a good statistical question because it has many responses. Okay, and that is all for